The Center for Educational Media and the College of Education at Middle Tennessee State University are proud to offer professional development to K-12 educators in Tennessee through our online video library. These videos are aligned with standards set by the Tennessee Department of Education. For more professional development videos, check out our website at cem.mtsu.edu.
Sandy McDonald's going to wrap up the day with a compelling discussion about access scores. I have access scores, now what? Anyone have that question ever? So that's what she's going to talk about today. Sandy McDonald, ESL teacher, Black Fox Elementary School in Murfreesboro City Schools. Thank you, Sandy, so you can take it away.
Okay. I don't know how compelling it's going to be. It is 2:15 and the end of the day and the last one. Will you pass those out for me, please? This presentation was designed with the general education classroom teacher in mind. I've been a classroom teacher. I've been a certified ELL classroom teacher, and now I'm a pull-out EL teacher. And I tried to make things the most efficient and effective. I get all of this information from our WIDA access scores. And though I would love to think that my gen ed teachers have time and they go back and they dig into every one of these scores and then they go dig into everything on the WIDA site that is there for them, I know realistically that is not happening. And that's okay. Because that's my job. That's what, my job is to make it easier for those gen ed teachers. Give them what they know, what they need to know, and what is going to be the most useful for them in moving forward. So yes, now I have these access scores, and what do I do with them? WIDA, World-Class Instructional Design and Assessment. There are three major components to this, okay? It is to assess, it is to help us teach, and most importantly, it is to help these children grow. The purpose of implementing the WIDA method or this model in the general education classroom, this is actually a overall or a whole school component. This is not an ELL program. It is designed to be used in the general education classroom with everyone. And that's why this last year it was implemented that all teachers will be trained on this. It also helps to grow not only every individual ELL student, but the whole subgroup, which is a huge component of our test scores and our evaluations now. What type of scores are there? The WIDA Access Test provides you with raw scores, scale scores, and proficiency scores. While raw scores are a number, some people really want that number, the WIDA site will actually tell you that that's not one that they would consider the most beneficial because it doesn't take into account the difficulty of the questions. So that's all it is a number, okay? The scale score uses difficulty of the questions, and that's in conjunction with the number that they've answered correctly, typical of any standardized test. The proficiency level, the proficiency scores is the heart, the meat of this program, and it's the interpreted scale score. It's what they've taken that raw score and those scale scores and they've made it mean something. Okay, now how do I use them? And that's the thing that is constantly, I feel like we are constantly given data to use. We're told to let it drive our instruction. But when you have all of this data to pull from, it helps to know what is going to be the most beneficial and what am I supposed to use each one for. Okay. The WIDA scores are used to determine students' eligibility for EL. Normally that's the placement test that they're given, not the access. If a student does come in towards the end of the year, it can be opted to just use the access test scores for the placement in the following year. Determine the exit criteria for ELLs. Okay, that's the heart of it. That's what it's for, is decide when are these students ready to exit and go with less ELL support. That does not mean that they are proficient. It just means that they are ready to not get, they're scaffolding. They're ready to take that next step. It informs class groupings and instruction. For a pullout, it helps me figure out where I need to how I need to group students. We've got 17 second graders. So if I'm going to pull them in a small group, how am I going to group them? And you decide by those scores. You can pull them based off each domain. You can decide to pull them on overall proficiency score. Whatever works for you, or it may change. Mine changes daily on what we're working on. If we're working on a reading, then I'm going to pull those high proficiency scores that are reading on a higher academic language level, and then I'm going to work with them on something different. Then I'm going to work on those lower reading level scores. It provides scaffolding, and if you use the WIDA site that I'm going to show you in the paperwork, it does that scaffolding pretty much automatic for you for every domain and every level. And it's used in assisting and staffing. We don't usually have to worry about that at the teacher level, but as admin and district levels, this kind of gives them an idea of, ooh, okay, in the fall, I'm not going to need as many because I've got 30% exiting. And it provides data for measuring annual growth of ELLs at individual, program, school, and district levels. Okay. Sample student reports. We're going to focus on the individual student report today, basically because as a classroom teacher and after discussing with current classroom teachers, this is the one they felt was the most beneficial to them overall. The individual score report, your ELL teachers get. A copy is made to go home. A copy is most likely made to give to the classroom teacher, and one in their permanent records. This is an example of one, and you can use this one because it is non-identifiable based on the student. We use this report because it gives us that proficiency level. It gives us that proficiency score in every domain. It tells us, for example, speaking. We need to work on speaking with this child, okay? They may be very, very bright. Listening, they're pretty good, okay? We can get that up to a 4.2, 4.3, which would make them eligible for exiting along with the other scores, but that's something that we can boost. Speaking is an easy one. We can get that up. We can show growth there. That's an easy one from a 2.2. That's giving them practice and use with academic language and experience exposure. What this tells you is, and over on the right is the scaled scores. Again, those are the ones that they give you. They're not all that useful without everything else. When you're looking at the 4 domains, listening, speaking, reading, and writing, the bottom score is their overall score, which allows them to exit if it's a 4.2. The literacy score is a combination of reading and writing, and that has to be a 4.0. The 4 domains, I always tell my teachers that, not that anything is not important, but those 4 top domains are going to be the most important for them to look at because they're specific. okay? They are, you don't have to worry about combining to find an oral language score or doing any math. We can see it's right there in front of us, okay? So has anyone not seen the student and individual student report? As gen ed teachers, do you get those reports? Okay, all right. That report, in conjunction with the Can-Do descriptors, key uses, the Can-Do key uses, help you find your individual where they are. It helps you find their current language abilities. It helps you set realistic expectations and growth potentials for them. It helps you, it tells you where they're going to go next, where they should be heading next. This is the most beneficial report, like I said, based on my experiences and conversations with the classroom teachers. It gives an individual domain score, which we looked at, but it also sets expectations for that score. On that individual student report, at the bottom of it, if you look at the example, it'll show you this is exactly what that child can do. Okay, this is a 4. This is what they should be able to do. So if you have a child where we just looked at as it was speaking at a 2.2, and you're giving them, wanting them to do an oral report, and with 3 facts and 6 new academic vocabulary words, is that going to be a possibility for them? Is that need to be something that needs to be modified? Absolutely. Okay. Okay, what do I do with this report? Again, we've looked at the exit criteria, must be greater than or equal to the 4.2. Literacy must be greater than or equal to a 4.0, all right? Is there anything that you see or that you notice based on a score report for this child? Okay, we talked about 2.2 is a fairly low speaking score. That can be brought up.
The reading and writing work together. That's the reason they're about the same. I think I see a lot of that where those reading and writing scores are very similar because they're interconnected, I think.
Okay, exactly. The reading and writing, that's an ELA. They're going to go together. They should work together. If there was a huge discrepancy, we may need to look at what's going on. Why did they not write much? Is a native language? What is hindering them in growing in one versus the other?
I'll say this too from our experience. This is just a small group of kids, but when we have kids that score low in speaking, much lower than their listening or the reading or their writing, we've found that it's really instruction on our point because they didn't quite understand. We had a child that should have exited. He scored basically a 2-point, everything else was good. We went to him and said, you can't do this. You have to, it doesn't matter if you want to. You've got to say as much as you know about this. And he exited, of course, the next time because he just needed somebody to say, this is what you have to do to pass. Do it, buddy. And he did, you know.
And you're exactly right. And this relates back to the cultural questions. The culture, there will be many children who will not speak until spoken to, and it is not an exaggerated answer. So it's a combination. We have to take that culture into account, but it's up to us to instruct them that it's okay if I ask you, what do you know, or tell me about the picture of George Washington crossing the Delaware. You can say more than it's the first president in a boat, okay? You don't have to give me the bare basics, the bare minimum. I want you to talk. I want you to share. I want you to use what you know, okay? So yes, that's exactly right. It could be instruction. It could be, okay, what do I need looking at that child, their culture, their background, or the student. Sometimes, some of them, we have a child that is a selective mute. They're obviously not going to exit ELL because they won't pass the speaking score. And Another thing that I want you to notice about this one is that the listening score is a 4.0, which is a good score, but typically, using this data to drive instruction, when we the first year that we did the WIDA Access, that speaking score seemed a bit inflated for us, or for the teachers at my school, and kind of in the district we discussed, especially versus the speaking score. That listening score was off the roof. We had tons of children, and these are the kids that I'm thinking, they got a 6 in listening? No way. And they did. They scored a 6 in listening and then would score a 2.0 or lower in speaking. And so we were seeing a big discrepancy in that. But then we looked at Black Fox, we looked at what the kids were doing. We looked at how long they had been in the country and if they were newcomers. And we found that those students who had pretty good scores, pretty high in the proficiency range in the upper 3s to 4s, low 4s, in everything except speaking, were in classrooms where they would speak fine with us, so we didn't understand, but they were in such a small group. They were in classrooms where they were, for whatever reason, they just didn't feel comfortable. And they had great teachers, but there were so many other children, or the dynamics of that classroom, they just were not comfortable talking. They were not comfortable sharing, or whether it be their accent or their native language, or they were afraid, or confidence, whatever. But a lot of those scores, we found out that, okay, they're just not sharing. So we needed to talk to our teachers. That was one thing we did, was go back and say, okay, let's make sure we're providing opportunities for our EL kids in your classrooms to feel safe. Let's build that culture. Let's build that community. And over the past couple years, we've seen both of those scores, or the speaking, significantly rise. And it's a little more proportionate now in relation to the speaking. How does this drive instruction? Does this tell you anything about the student that's going to help you plan for instruction?
At the beginning of the year it does, but it doesn't last very long because they change so quickly.
That is true.
Okay, and that's where we go into the key descriptors. She said that this doesn't last very long. Well, I would hope not. I would hope my children who read a 2.2 at the beginning of the year, which was last April, or March, or February for that matter, have grown. I hope they're not in that 2.2 anymore. However, I can test that by looking at the can-do descriptors. Okay, these on the very bottom of the sheet of the student sample report, this is the bottom of it. This is what it says, what they can do at that proficiency level. That means when they come into your classroom, this is what they're going to be able to do pretty much with consistency. Okay, granted, we all know they have our EL kids have a little bit of regression over the summer, which is expected. So do native English-speaking children when it comes to academics. But this is what their expectation level is at when they come into your classroom. So when you're looking at their overall score and they were a 3.4, but they won't speak to you, you know why. They have other scores that boost that up. It's an average. But this will tell you what they will be able to do when they walk in to your room. This does not tell you where you're taking them, though. Okay, how do I use the WIDA website? This is the absolute most important thing I think that I am going to show you today is this website. This is where you get your instruction. This is where you get your tools. This is where you get, okay, they can do this, so what's next? Okay, they're speaking in complete sentences, yes. Now, they're not ready to give a 3-paragraph, 5-minute oral report, but how am I going to get them there? And this website tells you exactly that. And I'm going to walk you through, and I gave you an example of a couple of different things. There are can-do descriptors, and they're for every grade level, by grade level. So that's why I didn't print those out. There is, you'll see it. Have any of you ever looked at the can-do descriptors for your grade level? Okay, so you know there are 4 pages or so for every grade level. You're going to select Teach on the WIDA website, and this is free for everybody. You don't have to have a login. You don't have to have any credentials for the portions that I'm going to show you. Log into Teach. Here we go. Click on Can-Do Descriptors. And there's all this lovely information. And I'm going to go to grades 2, 3. Okay? And again, there's a lot of information here. Way too much to go over in a 30, 40-minute block. Okay, these are the can-do descriptors. I'm going to stop for right now. And we talked about the recount, explain, argue, and discuss. There are can-do descriptors for every one of these domains, for every one of those 4 sections. So just to give you an idea of how useful these are, if the student we just looked at the report was a 4.0 in listening. So if I'm going to go over to a 4, and is it expanding? That's where they are right now. But where do I need them to be? I need them to at least be up in this 5. So what am I going to do to get them from there to there? Okay, this is for recounting. Okay, this is what they're going to do from one to the other. Okay, speaking, same score. They had a 2, so now I'm all the way back down here in emerging, where they're reproducing facts. Basically, it's just regurgitating word for word to retelling a story. Okay, they're probably going to miss a few facts, but you're not going to have that child come in and give you describing their main ideas of a text, okay, or of informational text. I can't scroll with this one. Okay, again, this is a lot. Okay, so I narrowed it down even more on your sheets, and it narrows it down on the website. This is my personal favorite, and I even make these for my teachers at the beginning of the years. On the can-do descriptors name charts, and I'm going to go to 1st grade because that's the one I printed out for you. I have these made up for me, and I do them on a poster and put Post-it notes on it, because then I can assess my children and see how they're growing and move them along this continuum, okay? And it is laid out very odd on the website. That's why I printed it. I use this listening and speaking, and I've got kids, and I put where they are, and this does not take each of the discuss, argue, recount, and explain. This just takes their overall. And the reason I say this is my favorite is because it's easy. And it's something that my teachers say, because I go back to them and say, and they know me. They say, they'll tell me, this was dumb. I didn't need this. Or this was way too much. When I gave them the first set, the first time they were like, if they had 3 or 4 kids, they were like 8 pages for each child. How am I supposed to look at this each week when I plan? And I'm like, you're exactly right. But they don't have time for that. So this sheet is so much easier for them to follow and use. And that's what we want. We want teachers to have something they can use that is actually beneficial to the children, okay? We have resources for days, okay? It's digging in and finding out what is the most useful and what is going to be the most beneficial to the children. And in 20 years, this is probably the second most beneficial thing I've used in helping me keep track of and making me accountable of making them move. And the first one, this is how old I am, I don't know how many of you have been in ESL this long, was the Rigby chart. And it did the same thing. I did the same thing with it. It took them through the domains along the continuum. And it's something that is visual, it's there, it's easy. It is 2 pages. You have those 2 pages. If you teach more than 1 grade level, you may have more. But for your classroom, you have 2 pages. And it tells you exactly what they're doing. So if you have a child that is, you can list all your students. You have, I've got 12 first graders, okay? And I put them, each student, where they are in each domain on a Post-it note, and I put the date. And I kind of do some assessments along the way. I use the model and move them along. Once I see, you know what, they're up to here now. Look at that. And I show them that. That shows which obviously makes them feel good about their language and their learning. And so they work just a little bit harder to get that next step. And that's what we want, small steps at a time. And to me, this is just very easy. If you look at the language they use, even for students, to explain this to my students, it's fairly easy. I mean, if they're at a level 6, then they're going to understand the vocabulary defend. Okay? So it is a wonderful tool for planning. Carry it around with you, throw it in your bag. You're pulling out and going, I'm not so sure that Mario can do this. Let me look at, okay, you know what? He needs to be pushed. Let's try it. Or if it's a skill he's expanding and you want to have him doing something in the reaching. Well, that's okay. That's 2 steps above. You may just have to give him a little more support in that aspect. Okay, but this is a tool that, as an EL teacher, I would provide my gen ed teachers with this, or with at least the opportunity to use this. As a gen ed teacher, I use this for my, one similar to this, for my English-speaking students. Because just because they're born in the United States, they can speak text and emoji fluently, I promise you. But English is still a problem for them. So, this is just good teaching. This is just some basic ideas to remember, remind us to look at every child and where are they and where do I want them to go and how am I going to get them there. Okay, again, it's on site. If I'm doing reading groups, I can look at my reading. Where are they? Okay, yeah, I need these 3 kids in this group and these 2 in this group, and I'm done. Okay, they know where they go. And it's so fluid. When you do it when you use that sheet, it's very fluid, and you can move them around very, very easily, and they get to watch themselves grow. Okay, what's next? So now you have scores. You've got a nice little sheet, how to organize them. So where are we going? The WIDA website is I can't even explain. There are so many resources on there. I don't know, we've used it for 3 years, and I still am like, wait, I didn't see that there. You know, or I find something if I'm looking for a specific lesson, or how, if a classroom is struggling with something, I know where to go. And this is not just for EL kids, this is for your gen ed teachers, everybody. Everything is on there that you need to plan, to help assess your EL children, and I promise you the use of it will make them grow, will help them grow. And the most important thing is that these are strategies that are for all students. And I think that's the most encompassing thing, is that we are grouping them all together. We are, this model helps all students grow, which is quite important with the amount of limited time and the more things that keep being added into those times. If I can do one thing that helps one child, that's awesome. But if I can do one thing that helps 15 children, that's way more awesomer. I'm a big fan of working smarter, not harder. And I definitely think that if you invest a little time into exploring this website and really looking at those scores and those sheets, that you will find that not only your EL students will grow, but all of your students will show more success. And that's it. Are there any questions? Any comments? Okay, I feel like I rushed through very quickly. Again, this is just the very basics. So anything that anytime, in all that spare time we have, feel free to go and browse the website. But again, that one sheet, the Can-Do Key Descriptors name chart, star it, asterisk, make copies, do whatever you need to do. But if you walk out and take anything back to your schools today, make it that one. Thank you very much.
Sandy, thank you.